Good morning. Welcome to Amir 5858. I'm Amir. I'm thankful to all international news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Asian, Canadian, African, Australian channels and AFP, AP writers, news agencies. Now the sum of headlines. Israeli strikes in Rafah killed at least 13 people. Israeli Prime Minister angry over non-supplying of American weapons. Russian president in North Korea. French far-right wants complete majority. Boeing boss face Canadian anger. Oilers friends in Canada. Nuclear weapons are increasing. Northern India in heat wave. 14 pilgrims died during Hajj. 260 million people in Canada and America are facing more than 90 degrees centigrade temperature, rather Fahrenheit. European Union decision for climate change. 11 asylum seekers died near Italy. Biden executive order for immigrants. Wildfire in California. Smartphone ban in Los Angeles schools. UN appeal for ceasefire in Sudan. On Wall Street, S&P 500, Nasdaq, and Dow Jones Industrials all increased. Now the news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Amir.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, President Biden signs an executive action protecting undocumented spouses and the children of U.S. citizens.
The outgoing CEO of Boeing is grilled by Congress over the company's workplace culture and safety record.
And Dr. Anthony Fauci discusses his new memoir, chronicling a six-decade career in public health, from the AIDS crisis to COVID and more.
If ever there was a time when you didn't want to have a public health crisis, it was at a time of profound divisiveness within our country.
I'm Stephanie Tsai with NewsHour West. Here are the latest headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims a U.S. official assured him the Biden administration is trying to remove bottlenecks on arms deliveries to Israel. The Prime Minister has criticized the administration for withholding weapons in recent months, but during a press conference with the NATO Secretary General today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken would not confirm whether he made those assurances, and he said that only one shipment has been withheld.
We, as you know, are continuing to review one shipment that President Biden has talked about with regard to 2,000-pound bombs. But everything else is moving as it normally would move. And again, with the perspective of making sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against this multiplicity of challenges.
The shipment in question was held back in May amid concerns about civilian casualties in densely populated Rafah. At the same press conference, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg expressed concern over growing military ties between Russia and North Korea. He pointed to Moscow's support for North Korea's missile and nuclear programs. That unfolded as Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the North, where he was greeted at the airport in Pyongyang by Kim Jong-un. The two leaders are set to hold a round of talks on Wednesday. The annual Muslim Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia is wrapping up amid deadly heat. Temperatures in Mecca today hit 118 degrees. Hundreds of Egyptians and at least 60 Jordanians have reportedly died of heat stroke. Still, throngs of pilgrims gathered today to participate in the closing rituals. More than 1.8 million people took part in Hajj this year, according to Saudi officials. Meantime, tens of millions of people across the U.S. are under extreme heat alerts. The National Weather Service says the conditions will affect areas from Iowa to Maine until at least Friday. Chicago broke a heat record dating from the 1950s to start the week. Temperatures there will stay close to 100 degrees in the days ahead. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul is enlisting dozens of state agencies and the National Guard to assist residents.
This is going to be one for the ages. When you think about the fact that places normally very pleasant this time of year, like Syracuse and Ithaca, are going to have an excess of 106 real field degrees on their skin and how it feels to your body today.
In the West, firefighters are battling multiple blazes, including this one in Colusa County, California. In New Mexico, fires have forced thousands of residents to flee. The governor declared a state of emergency and more than 500 structures have been damaged. That's as the first potential tropical storm of the season is expected to make landfall near Texas by Wednesday with heavy rain and potential flooding. Former President Trump will remain under a gag order in his criminal hush money case following his felony conviction last month. The New York Court of Appeals declined to hear an appeal, saying no substantial constitutional question is directly involved. The judge in the case imposed the gag order in March before the trial began. Mr. Trump was found in contempt of court for violating the order and was threatened with jail time. The Trump campaign said it will continue to fight the order. The shooter who killed 5 people at an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Colorado Springs pleaded guilty to 50 federal hate crimes today. Anderson Lee Aldrich was sentenced to 55 life terms in prison for the 2022 attack with no possibility of parole. Aldrich pleaded guilty to state charges last year. And finally, the legendary Baseball Hall of Famer Willie Mays has died. A 2-time MVP, Mays is considered one of the all-time baseball greats. He started his career in the Negro League and played with the Giants in both New York and San Francisco, ending his career with the New York Mets in 1973. Mays was 93. The NewsHour will have more coverage on his death tomorrow. Still to come on the NewsHour, the UN Security Council demands Sudan's paramilitary force halt its siege of a city that threatens the safety of more than 1 million people. With less than 5 months to the presidential election, we take a look at the results of the latest PBS News NPR Marist poll, and a new investigation reveals how some universities profit from land taken from indigenous peoples.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios.
Bump in teacher pay in Missouri and why advocates are worried about how the raise will be funded. That's at pbs.org/newshour.
And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amir.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for spending part of your evening.
On this Tuesday night, Boeing's boss gets blasted.
I want them to be held accountable for murdering 346 lives.
The company's CEO confronted by grieving families.
What do you have to say to the families who are here today, sir?
Hidden poverty and grim reality check gives a full picture of how many Canadians are finding life unaffordable. A red carpet welcome for Russia's president, why he's in North Korea and fears of the deals he could strike. And bleeding blue and orange.
The once in a lifetime sort of thing.
Die-hard Oilers fans traveling far and wide for a do-or-die game.
Show with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The man who gets paid $33 million a year to run Boeing was accused today of strip mining the company for profit. And Dave Calhoun was confronted by angry, grieving families whose loved ones died in Boeing plane crashes. They brought photos of the dead to a hearing in Washington, D.C., demanding the head of Boeing look them in the eye and see their pain. Among them, Canadian families. Calhoun did address them directly. He apologized for the grief Boeing has caused. The company is under intense scrutiny, accused of cutting corners and putting profits over safety. And just before today's hearing, another whistleblower came forward. Jackson Prosco has our top story on a dramatic day of families demanding corporate responsibility.
Boeing CEO expected questions from lawmakers. At the U.S. Capitol, Dave Calhoun was confronted by families of the 346 people killed in crashes of his company's 737 MAX jets.
I'm not thinking of a 6 minutes of my father's last breath on the plane.
The Moore family came here from Toronto to look Calhoun in the eye. Danielle Moore was one of 18 Canadians killed in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Have you ever heard anything from Boeing that's been satisfactory?
No, not. That's why we cannot even start healing. How could you heal when no one held accountable?
Victims like the Moores believe the problems at Boeing run right to the top. What do you have to say to the families who are here today, sir? Under oath, Calhoun turned and delivered a surprise apology, but offered no explanation for what went wrong.
I apologize for the grief that we have caused. And I want you to know we are totally committed in their memory to work and focus on safety for as long as we're employed by Boeing.
You accept that Boeing was responsible for the hearing into safety and quality control issues at Boeing unfolded just hours after yet another whistleblower came forward, alleging Boeing mishandled defective parts and potentially installed them on airplanes. Why haven't you resigned?
Senator, I'm sticking this through. I'm proud of having taken the job. I'm proud of our safety record, and I am very proud of our Boeing people.
You're proud of the safety record?
I am proud of every action we have taken.
Every action?
Yes, sir.
Boeing still faces potential prosecution for allegedly violating a settlement agreement that had shielded executives from liability for the MAX crashes. It should not be in the air. Victims' families believe a criminal trial is now the only way to get answers about how their loved ones died.
My sister was someone who cared, and what I'm seeing at Boeing is a culture of people who don't care.
During questioning, Calhoun acknowledged his company has retaliated against whistleblowers in the past. He also said that he has not personally spoken with any of the whistleblowers who've come forward to raise safety concerns. Don?
All right, Jackson in Washington, thanks. Millions of people are sweltering under a heat dome that's settled in over much of the U.S. and Canada. This dangerous level of heat is happening more often and lasting longer because of climate change. It's not even summer yet, and heat records are expected to be shattered. The challenge, as Mike Armstrong explains, is how we adapt to this extreme heat.
There weren't many complaints from these kids as they were pulled out of their classroom Tuesday.
Anything to get out of class?
Things were a little tougher for the teachers watching.
It's pretty hot. I think I've never had experienced such heat before.
The temperature in Montreal hit 30 degrees Celsius, but add to that extreme humidity, it felt like 40 degrees for a second day in a row.
It's just the start of it, so it's not too bad there. It's probably going to get a little rough by tomorrow.
The danger from these temperatures is in fact cumulative. The longer a heat wave lasts, the tougher it is on the body. Just like. Less clothes, the better. And hydrate.
You see the fans today as well?
In Ottawa, with the humidity, it hit 44 degrees. The city's medical health officer says people should avoid strenuous activities. I am going home. Gonna get an AC, and I think I'm overheating right now, so...
This is going to be one for the ages.
The governor of New York State is warning about air quality and the heat. The timing, she says, is a concern. These extreme temperatures are hitting places earlier in the year than usual. Bodies do acclimate as the summer goes on. These temperatures in mid-June are harder to take. New record highs are being set all over the U.S. Northeast.
When these things happen, when we have these heat waves, unfortunately, people in communities like this die all the time. It's a silent killer of so many.
Now, a heat wave that hit Montreal in 2018 killed 66 people. The city's officially on alert right now. It's also asking Montrealers to be aware that people experiencing homelessness are going to need help.
Libraries, businesses, the metro, to have a degree of tolerance knowing that there is this heat risk there for the next few days.
Montreal's full emergency protocols kick in when there are 3 consecutive days above 33 degrees. That would trigger things like teams going door to door to check on people. A shift from prevention to intervention. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
In California, firefighters are trying to intervene in a wildfire northwest of Sacramento. It grew by more than 20 hectares overnight. The site's fire is only 15% contained. High winds and the low humidity mean the fire is spreading quickly. North of San Francisco, favorable weather conditions have allowed firefighters to increase containment of the Point Fire, and another fire that's burning in the mountains north of LA and prompted evacuations on Sunday is just 24% contained. In the Northwest Territories, a wildfire that forced most residents to flee Fort Good Hope is still growing, but so far homes and businesses have been spared. Fire officials say it's now significantly larger than the 1,300 hectares reported yesterday. The cooler temperatures and favorable winds are helping crews trying to get the upper hand. Residents say they are stressed about leaning on each other for support.
It's really about community, right? And I can see that here in this house too, that everybody comes together to support and help each other, which is really good.
Crews are tackling the fire from the ground, and air tankers are dropping water from the sky. The fire is one of 36 now burning in the territory. We're learning more about a daytime shooting in Toronto that left 3 people dead. Police confirm a woman and 2 men were killed yesterday afternoon in the lobby of a North York office building. Investigators say the gunman is believed to be among the dead. Global News has learned 2 of the people killed are Arash Misagi and his business partner. The 3rd person has yet to be identified. Investigators say it appears the motive was an argument over business. In 2018, Misagi was charged in an alleged $17 million mortgage fraud investigation. Court records show he also faced civil lawsuits over alleged mortgage fraud. There remains a lack of clarity and answers on the question of foreign interference in Canadian politics. For days, the Prime Minister has dodged questions about whether any Liberal MPs allegedly colluded with hostile foreign states. Today, others, including the Deputy Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, were asked about it. Mackenzie Gray on the latest on how each party is responding. Mac.
Deputy Prime Minister Christian Freeland seems to be walking back a previously made commitment, Donna, to look at the foreign matter.
We take foreign interference very seriously.
In fact, but how seriously the Liberals are interested in knowing more is now in question. Freeland had previously said the Liberal Party would conduct an internal follow-up into startling allegations from an all-party report into foreign interference. But when pressed by Global News on what a follow-up would look like, she pointed to a different review.
These are very delicate security matters, and that is why we set up the Hogue Commission. It's the right thing to ask Justice Hogue to expand her mandate to continue the review.
No mention of an internal process, instead referencing the public inquiry into foreign interference, which is now looking into which MPs might have been wittingly receiving help from other countries. In a statement, the Liberal Party would also not say if the process is going forward. We continually review our internal processes to protect the party from foreign interference. Attempting to understand his own caucus situation, the leader of the bloc has applied for security clearance to read the report. But we'll talk about it after.
So don't wait for me. We're coming here and saying some spectacular things from the report. Won't happen.
That leaves Pierre Poilievre as the only leader unwilling to read the report, forgoing access to a document that alleges both China and India interfering in Conservative Party leadership races, not taking a single question. For the past 2 weeks, Conservative MPs have argued if Poilievre reads the unredacted version, he won't be able to act on what he learns. But Donna, his office has said he's willing to take a briefing from CSIS on issues specific to the Conservatives.
Okay, Mackenzie, thanks. Food Banks Canada has looked at poverty in Canada through a new lens, measuring it differently than in the past and coming up with a stark new conclusion about how many people are unable to meet their basic needs. As Heidi Petrocic explains, it's higher than previously thought. Food insecurity isn't hidden at nonprofits trying to keep up with demand. This affordable produce market has more than doubled its patrons in 5 months of operation.
I see real life every day of people struggling and being hungry and being so grateful that a service like ours exists.
The disconnect between what those like Mandy Chapman see firsthand and Canada's official poverty rate of roughly 7% prompted a deeper dive into the problem.
What we're seeing on the ground is sort of, we feel should be reflected in what is being used to monitor progress in poverty reduction.
So experts went beyond just income and essentials and used what's called a material deprivation index. They factored in whether people can afford the things others take for granted, like owning a pair of well-fitted shoes, buying a small gift for family or friends once a year, or participating in special occasions. In the end, the report revealed Canada's hidden poverty rate of 25%.
We're looking at close to 10 million people, and that's 6 million more than the official poverty rate.
The study also found 30% of young people, more than 44% of single-parent households, and 42% of renters can't afford at least 2 of the items on the deprivation list, and almost 24% are employed.
I think this really uncovers more of the problem because oftentimes somebody may be paying their rent, but they're paying the rent at the cost of the other things that they can't do.
This community garden grows fresh food for those who can't afford store prices. Its executive director hopes the report will push policymakers towards long-term change.
If I had the magic wand, I really think a guaranteed basic income is what we need.
The report's authors believe this new measure of poverty can be used to design better government programs to meet the needs of Canadians overlooked until now. Heidi Petrocic, Global News, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Stellantis is recalling more than 1 million vehicles in Canada and the US because of software glitch that disables rear view cameras. The recall covers some Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler models made from 2021 to 2023. Stellantis will fix the problem with an online software update, which some vehicles have already received. The automaker says it's unaware of any injuries or accidents related to the software. Russia's president is on to North Korea. Coming up, the fears the two are teaming up to take on the West.
Yengo, different from a taxi. Install and go.
There's one place Russia's president can go to get a warm welcome: North Korea. Vladimir Putin landed there today for a carefully choreographed visit. North Korea only allows the outside world to see what it wants people to see, and the regime keeps the North Korean people in the dark through a system of isolation and brutal repression. So what can Vladimir Putin gain by going there? As Redmond Shannon reports, Western nations are watching closely.
Waiting for an old friend. Kim Jong-un rolling out the communist red carpet for Vladimir Putin's first visit to the isolated nation of North Korea in 24 years. Putin himself, ever more shunned, coming to strike a deal, or make that deals, joined by cabinet ministers and the head of Russia's space program. In advance of his visit, Putin wrote in North Korean state media about Pyongyang's support for Russia's war in Ukraine. Both sides deny Western accusations that the support involves arms sales to Moscow, something that would violate UN sanctions on North Korea.
North Korea is providing significant munitions to Russia.
UN monitors have reportedly found fragments of North Korean missiles in Ukraine.
What we see is there are a lot of areas of symbiosis in the North Korean-Russian relationship.
This analyst says Russia simply can't build the weapons it wants fast enough.
The Russian economy is starved for manpower, and North Korea has historically really found it beneficial to effectively rent out their people as extremely low-cost laborers.
The West, which is arming Ukraine, is also concerned about what this meeting could mean for North Korea.
The potential support that Russia provides to North Korea when it comes to supporting their missile and nuclear programs.
Since 2022, the nuclear-armed North has been regularly testing ballistic missiles, increasing tensions with the South. And on Tuesday, South Korean troops fired warning shots after they said Northern soldiers crossed into the demilitarized zone at the border. The lines of global division are as clear as they have been since the Cold War, illustrated by summits such as these. Putin flies on to communist-ruled Vietnam on Wednesday. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Arrested ahead what Justin Timberlake was charged with in the Hamptons. Thailand has cleared the last major hurdle to become the first country in Southeast Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. The country's Senate voted overwhelmingly in favor of the bill. It grants full legal, financial, and medical rights for all marriage partners. The legislation must now be endorsed by the king and will come into effect 120 days after it's published in the Royal Gazette, which is used by the government to communicate information to the public. The first same-sex wedding could take place in Thailand later this year. NVIDIA, the tech giant at the center of the artificial intelligence boom, is now the world's most valuable public company. The chipmaker dethroned Microsoft for the top spot today when its share price rose above $135. That makes it worth $3.3 trillion. It overtook Apple earlier this month. NVIDIA's shares are up more than 170% this year. Its highly sought-after chips are said to be superior to its competitors, and demand is at an all-time high. Singer and actor Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. This is his mugshot, released by police late this afternoon. He was arrested in the Hamptons on New York's Long Island. Police say he ran a stop sign while driving a 2025 BMW, drifted out of his traffic lane, and was pulled over by an officer who determined he was in an intoxicated condition. Timberlake was charged and held overnight. Neither he nor his representatives have commented. Ride or die next. How far Edmonton's most loyal fans will go to support the Oilers. Nerves are sky high for hockey fans tonight. The odds of the Edmonton Oilers repeating that stunning 8-1 win over the Florida Panthers on Saturday are slim, but any kind of win will do. The Oilers are back in Florida facing a stark reality. Win and the series goes back to Edmonton on Friday. Lose and the Stanley Cup stays south of the border for another year. Tonight we've got Jeff Semple in Edmonton and Slav Kornick in Sunrise, Florida, where it will all play out. Slav.
That's right, Donna. It's do or die for the Oilers tonight, but it's a situation they're not unfamiliar with because it's the fourth time in this playoff run the Oilers have faced elimination. No doubt about it, it's a very difficult position to be in, but the Oilers say in some ways it takes some pressure off of being in the Stanley Cup final because nobody, or very few people anyway, outside their locker room are expecting the Oilers to come back in the series because as history tells us, the chances are very low. Only 4 teams have rallied from a 3-0 deficit to come back and win a series. The Oilers know a second straight victory tonight will be very difficult. The Panthers are going to be hungry to finish the series and capture the Stanley Cup here in Sunrise, Florida on home ice. But if the Oilers are able to get a win and send this series back to Edmonton, that's when the Stanley Cup final will become very interesting.
And I'm here in Edmonton, about 4,500 kilometers from Florida, and this series is actually setting a new record for travel. It's the longest distance between 2 Stanley Cup contenders, but that's nothing compared to the air miles being racked up by some of these die-hard fans. The Oilers fan pre-game ritual. That's it for Blue. War paint for a must-win battle. This former Edmontonian now lives in Australia.
Let's go!
He took 3 flights over 2 days for this.
To me, it's like a once-in-a-lifetime sort of thing that I can do.
It's been a lifetime, 31 years since the Canadian team hoisted the cup. More than 60,000 visitors have traveled here to Edmonton, hoping to end that streak.
Let's go Oilers!
This Oilers fan came from Tasmania.
14,137 kilometers one way.
She's booked her return flight for after a hopeful Game 7.
I came here from the other side of the world, so there's no other option but to just keep believing.
Let's see it. This Oilers superfan is actually British.
Oh, yeah.
He watched an Oilers game on TV as a kid and never looked back.
I always say I did choose the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers chose me.
But if hockey fans around the world are cheering for Edmonton, what about fans in Canada? This TV commercial recently suggested that hockey fans should rally around our remaining Canadian teams. It was widely condemned online. But those die-hard loyalties might be softening. An opinion poll found that more than half of Canadians, 57%, are now cheering for the Edmonton Oilers, with unconfirmed reports, Donna, that even some lifelong Toronto Maple Leafs fans are hopping aboard the bandwagon.
Say it ain't so. Jeff Semple in Edmonton. Thanks for that reveal. That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Jeff mentioned this is the farthest distance between 2 Stanley Cup finalists ever, and the weather is also a sign of that. Tonight's your Canada is southern Alberta. This is where people woke up to nearly 30 centimeters of snow. Maybe a sign of support for Canada's team? Who knows? Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. At least 17 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip overnight after Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes on homes in the Nusayrat and Quraysh refugee camps. This came after at least 9 Palestinians were reported killed in another Israeli attack while waiting for aid trucks to arrive in the southern city of Rafah. This is Mohammed Dalul, the aunt of one of the men killed in the strike.
They are merchants. They have nothing to do with anything. They were struck with missiles. There's no safety. No safety. These are innocent people, honest people who had nothing to do with anything. They killed the merchants. They killed people. They killed children. They killed women. They have mistreated us.
In Jerusalem, at least 1 person was wounded and 9 others arrested Monday night as thousands of protesters rallied near the home of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Among those detained was a family member of an Israeli taken hostage by Hamas. It was one of dozens of protests taking place across Israel this week demanding immediate elections and a Gaza ceasefire. This is 26-year-old Yotam Cohen, whose brother remains a hostage in Gaza.
8 months have been much roller coaster for me and the other hostage families, and I think that without the struggle, without the protest, this deal will also be put down, and we're here to tell the government and shout for them to close the deal and to bring it up.
The chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee has agreed to back the sale of $18 billion worth of F-15 fighter jets and other arms to Israel following intense pressure from the Biden administration. New York Congressmember Gregory Meeks had previously held up the weapons sales after objecting to Israel's attacks on civilians. Maryland Democrat and Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Ben Cardin has also signed off on the sales. This comes as a French court has reversed a ruling that would have seen Israeli weapons traders barred from the world's largest arms expo. The Eurosatory exhibition opened in Paris Monday without the participation of Israeli delegates and intermediaries after peace activists successfully argued a government ban on Israeli companies operating booths at the event didn't go far enough. Earlier today, however, a commercial court reversed that decision. The International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, known as ICAN, is calling on the world's nuclear powers to stop ratcheting up tensions as a new report shows a surge in nuclear weapons spending. In a recent interview, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the military alliance is weighing, quote, how many nuclear warheads should be operational and which should be stored, unquote. The U.S. currently has nuclear weapons deployed in Italy, Germany, Turkey, Belgium, and the Netherlands, while Russia has recently deployed warheads to Belarus. ICAN said, quote, the NATO countries hosting U.S. nuclear weapons should admit to their citizens that they have these inhumane weapons on their soil without their say. No country should be demonstrating their willingness to join in the killing of millions of people, they said. On Monday, Stoltenberg visited President Biden at the White House and spoke at the Wilson Center think tank where he boasted of NATO's increased weapons spending.
Creates a market for defense sales. Over the last 2 years, more than 2/3 of European defense acquisitions were made with US firms. That is more than $140 billion worth of contracts to US defense companies. So NATO is good for US security, good for US industry, and good for US jobs.
That's the NATO Secretary General. South Korea's military says the soldiers fired warning shots at about 2 dozen North Korean troops who crossed the heavily fortified demilitarized zone separating the two countries. It was the second reported border incursion this month and came as Russian President Vladimir Putin departed for a state visit to Pyongyang, where he's set to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to discuss trade, weapons sales, and military assistance. It's Putin's first visit to North Korea since 2000. In India, residents of New Delhi remain under a red alert, the highest level of warning, with daytime temperatures soaring past 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Meteorologists say northern India is in the midst of its longest ever heat wave, with highs in some areas pushing the limits of what humans can survive. In Saudi Arabia, at least 14 Muslim worshippers have died of heat stroke during the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca. On Sunday, temperatures around the Great Mosque of Mecca reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. In North America, an estimated 260 million people in the U.S. and Canada face temperatures of 90 degrees or higher this week as a persistent heat dome is forecast to settle over cities, including Chicago, New York, and Toronto. Meanwhile, in western states, crews are battling fresh wildfires that have exploded in Los Angeles, Northern California's Sonoma County, as well as New Mexico and elsewhere. This comes as dozens of labor and environmental groups petitioned the Federal Emergency Management Agency Monday to include wildfires and extreme heat in its definition of a major disaster, as both events are set to get even more frequent and more destructive due to the worsening climate crisis. The European Union has approved a landmark environmental law that will require the bloc's 27 member states to restore nature on at least 1/5 of their land and sea by 2030. Over 80% of Europe's natural habitats are considered to be in poor health. At least 11 asylum seekers have died, and dozens are missing after 2 shipwrecks off the southern coast of Italy. Over 50 migrants were rescued Monday from a sinking wooden boat, while another boat, which had set off from Turkey, caught fire and overturned. Many of the refugees came from Syria, Egypt, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. The International Organization for Migration estimates more than 27,000 migrants have died in the Mediterranean Sea over the last decade as they attempt to reach Europe from northern Africa. The Biden administration is announcing a new policy that will protect tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens from deportation and grant them a pathway to citizenship. The measure is likely to benefit some 500,000 people who've lived in the United States for at least 10 years and who would otherwise face mounting bureaucratic and legal challenges to obtain these protections if they enter the U.S. unauthorized. Who will also be allowed to obtain work permits. President Biden's announcing the policy at the White House later today, marking the 12th anniversary of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, which provides deportation relief for undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children. This comes just weeks after Biden issued a measure temporarily shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border and denying asylum to those migrants who do not cross into the U.S. via ports of entry. Here in New York, Governor Kathy Hochul has come under fire from health experts after saying she's exploring whether to reinstitute a partial ban on face coverings in public spaces. Hochul's comments came during an interview on CNN where she was asked by reporter Laura Coates if she would support a call by Jewish leaders to ban masks so pro-Palestinian protesters can be more easily identified. I absolutely will go back and take a look at this and see whether it can be restored, because it is frightening to people. You're sitting on a subway train and someone puts on a mask like this and comes in. You don't know if they're going to be committing a crime, they're going to have a gun, or whether they're just going to be threatening and intimidating you because you are Jewish, which is exactly what happened the other day. Absolutely unacceptable in the state of New York. New York City Council member Shahana Hanif called the governor's comments inexplicable and said a mask ban would, quote, serve to appease reactionary voices and go against logical health protections. Mask bans won't deter crime, but only hinder public health, Councilmember Hanif said. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has also backed a possible mask ban, citing protests as well as crimes committed by masked people. Meanwhile, New York City Controller Brad Lander and others say they will bring legal challenges to Governor Hochul's halting of New York City's congestion charge plan, which would charge drivers $15 to enter parts of Manhattan. The plan, which had been scheduled to go into effect later this month, would put billions back into New York City's ailing public transportation system and significantly reduce car pollution. A federal judge Monday blocked the Biden administration's expanded Title IX protections in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. The federal regulation was recently expanded to increase civil rights protections for transgender students, students who experience sex discrimination and harassment, and for pregnant people and survivors of sexual assault in schools. Days earlier, another federal judge temporarily blocked the new rules from taking effect in Idaho, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Montana. Title IX compliance is required to receive federal education assistance, but Republican states have been fighting against its expansion of protections for trans children. Thailand's Senate has overwhelmingly approved a marriage equality bill, making it the first country in Southeast Asia to recognize same-sex and non-binary couples. If Thailand's king grants final approval, the new law will allow any two people aged 18 or older to wed and grants them equal rights to adopt children, inherit property, claim tax breaks, and more. This is 18-year-old Thaipak Yoka Chadlat, who helped draft the marriage equality bill.
Thank you for all your donations to the same-sex marriage culture. This is not just about amending a law, it is also going to change the lives of those in the LGBTQ community and their families. As an 18-year-old non-binary youth, this is an important step for society and for our future. We are very proud to make history today with love, triumph, total prejudice.
And after half a century behind bars, former Black Panther Veronza Bowers has been released. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1973 for the murder of a U.S. park ranger based on testimony from government informants. He's consistently claimed his innocence. Many call him one of the longest-serving political prisoners in U.S. history. He was freed in May from the Federal Medical Center in North Carolina. In a video shared with Democracy Now!, 70-year-old Bowers said he became a healer in prison and hopes to continue his work on the outside.
I learned one thing doing incarceration, that a man or a woman has to sooner or later make a decision, make a choice as to how they intend to live life inside. Long ago I made the decision, I made a choice to help my fellow men to heal and to find peace in the chaos. And that chaos will be raging all around, swirling. Anyway, I was able to do that by utilizing the soothing and healing sounds of my beloved shopwatch. That's the bamboo flute that I wrote, and meditation.
Veronza Bowers, former Black Panther, freed from prison after half a century behind bars. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Coming up in a...
Tonight, the record-breaking heat wave intensifying and pushing east, and a tropical threat we're tracking in the Gulf. Dangerous heat impacting more than 70 million from Iowa to Maine. Scorching temperatures set to last for days. Amid the heat in Massachusetts, 911 services knocked down statewide for hours. And in the west, dozens of wildfires burning. A state of emergency in New Mexico, thousands forced to evacuate. And a warning in Texas, the first potential tropical storm of the year taking aim. How woke is tracking it all. Also tonight, President Biden's new executive action shielding 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation. Who will qualify? And Republicans attacking the plan as amnesty. Boeing CEO on Capitol Hill testifying for the first time since that door plug blowout. A dramatic moment in the room. His apology to families of 737 MAX crash victims. And the grilling he faced after yet another Boeing whistleblower comes forward. Justin Timberlake arrested in the Hamptons for DWI. The mugshot just out, where he allegedly told the officer how much he had to drink.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Get worse. Spread all the way down here.
Tonight, go now. The message for thousands in New Mexico as wildfires burn out of control.
This thing turned from a very small bubble into a full raging, all-consuming fire bit by the winds.
Why firefighters are struggling to contain the blazes.
Forest fire is moving pretty quickly. It's a difficult situation, and it's a rapidly changing situation.
Plus the record-breaking heat wave for much of the country. The CBS Evening News starts now. Fast-moving wildfires, record-breaking heat, and a tropical...
Tonight, breaking news has become on the air. This life-threatening heat in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the Mid-Atlantic, and for many, it's bound to get worse. Ginger Z is here. Also just in, the house explosion in upstate New York. The image is coming in from Syracuse. And Justin Timberlake arrested for DWI. The new image is just in, of him driving before the arrest. First tonight, the dangerous heat, surging temperatures across at least 20 states and into the Northeast. Temperatures in the 90s, the heat index will feel like reading above 100. Tonight, New York's governor calling up the National Guard in the West. Crews battling at least 19 wildfires. The emergency playing out right now in New Mexico. And the tropical storm warning tonight, first of the hurricane season. Ginger takes us through it all. Tonight, President Biden's major rule on immigration, protecting 500,000 undocumented immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens who have been here for 10 years or more. It comes just weeks after President Biden's crackdown on the border, shutting it down between legal ports of entry. In New York City tonight, NYPD making an arrest for horrific daytime sexual assault of a 13-year-old in the park. Tonight, Boeing CEO grilled at Capitol Hill for the first time since that door plug blew off the plane at 16,000 feet. Tonight, Russia's Vladimir Putin and the red carpet welcome in North Korea. Putin praising North Korea for supporting the war in Ukraine. in Hamptons, accused of driving through a stop sign and swerving out of his lane. Tonight, the new video just of Timberlake driving before that arrest, and what Timberlake told the arresting officer. Tonight, Celine Dion's emotional return to the stage, battling stiff person syndrome, and what she revealed. Also tonight, here are the $53 plane tickets for travel in the U.S. and beyond. The veteran actor recovering after falling from the stage, and how Boston plans to celebrate the Celtics. Get the upvotes ready.
Some Democrats are already preparing for defeat in November, and they're cranking up the resistance machine. The New York Times is reporting that left-wing activists are taking extraordinary preemptive actions to sabotage Trump's America First agenda. Groups like the ACLU, CAP Action Fund are planning a series of moves to stop the implementation of everything from Trump's mass deportation program to ending the EV mandates to ramping up oil and gas. The ACLU says that they've even mapped out 63 scenarios in which Trump could pose a threat to individual rights and the rule of law.
We need to lay out a plan for what if the worst threats were to come to pass. Donald Trump gets a second term in office, he will have enormous powers. It's going to be much more rigorous, so we've got to be ready. So that's why our lawyers right now are mapping out the cases, the theories, how we can end it here. After Trump won, there were demonstrations, there was litigation, there was no coordination between the activist base and the legal base, and we have to close the daylight between those spaces.
The big defenders of democracy joining me now, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, and none of this is really surprising. Conservative groups, they try to stop, what the Democrat presidents do as well with a variety of things. But I think more interesting is what advice would you give to the Trump team, knowing the resistance is out there, for his first 100 days?
Yeah, Laura, it's not surprising at all. I'd say the only thing I agree with all these people on is that they need to be prepared for defeat this November. You saw another example today of Joe Biden putting the interests of illegal aliens ahead of Americans by giving a mass amnesty program without legal authority. We knew that these left-wing activists and governors would swing into action. That's where the Trump man's trying to handcuff his action. Look at the issues no one care much about, though. The one thing that article talks most about is immigration. And of course, who are they going to go to bat for? Foreign illegal aliens who are in our country. The kind of people who just brutally murdered and raped Rachel Moran, or raped at knife point the 13-year-old girl in New York. That's the kind of people that these organizations want to go to bat for. So I think President Trump recognizes that. He's ready for it. He's got a great team around him. They're going to hit the ground running in 2025. And they're going to make sure the actions they take are legally airtight and they're litigated promptly to a resolution that supports the American people, that supports the interests of foreigners.
Well, Senator, House Democrats set up a task force to deal with Trump should he win. What?
What we want to do is to make sure that people know what the United States would look like if Donald Trump were, in fact, elected as president. He would seize supreme power. He'd greatly expand and centralize his power. He would reduce the oversight of Congress and the courts. There would be no balance to ensure that Christian nationalism is embedded in every federal agency. And then it would eliminate the wall between him and the Department of Justice.
That's so boring. First of all, she's reading. I love how she's on television, she's reading a screen. So, what will America look like? She makes sure everyone knows what it'll look like. I think people say, well, it certainly would feel more like the America that we all know and love than open season on innocent Americans as we see right now.
Yeah, Laura, we don't have to imagine what America would look like under Donald Trump. We know for 4 years. We had stable prices, we had a growing economy with high-paying jobs, working class, we had secure border, we had peace and stability around the world. That's what America looked like under Donald Trump's presidency. Is what it will look like. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why the American people want Donald Trump back in the White House and Joe Biden out of the White House. I have to say that so many people mention this article and talk about the resistance, they just sound like Trump-deranged lunatics. I mean, they're losers who are running a rally play in their own office. They're activists. I think a lot of these liberals like to imagine what they would be like in Germany in the 1930s, but we know what they would be like. They're trying to walk up their political houses. Street workers are marching outside the home of the Supreme Court justices. And now they are using a mandate to try to win. They're even like living all around on campuses all around America, condemning Jews for the crimes of the only class. But we're young. I think we know what most of these people would do in the 1930s, irrespective of whatever crazy rally play is unfolding around the heads.
Yeah, well, they've certainly done a number on this country over the last almost 40 years.
Good morning, I'm Oliver Farry, and this is Daybreak. Russian President Vladimir Putin touches down in North Korea on his first visit in 24 years. He is cementing a closer relationship with Kim Jong-un at a time when Moscow is increasingly reliant on North Korean weapons for its war effort in Ukraine. Israel's military says it has prepared operational plans for a Lebanon offensive, has increased exchanges of rocket fire with Hezbollah, raised fears of an escalation. The IDF says Hezbollah would be destroyed if Israel steps up its offensive. Joe Biden unveils plans to give protections to immigrants living illegally in the United States who are married to American citizens and resident in the US for at least 10 years. The move is likely to benefit up to 500,000 people and offers them a path to citizenship. And later in the show, I'll be joined by Liam McGuinn. He'll bring us through all of the top stories from today's international press, including all the details on Juneteenth, the United States' latest holiday. That's coming up on today's Press Review.
The big defenders of democracy joining now, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, none of this is really surprising. Conservative groups, they try to stop, what the Democrat presidents do as well with a variety of things. But I think more interesting is what advice
Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in North Korea early on Wednesday morning for his first visit to the country in 24 years. The meeting between Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is putting renewed focus on relations between the two countries. Putin's trip comes as Russia is in need of more weapons to wage its war in Ukraine, and North Korea seeks to upgrade its nuclear capabilities. He spoke earlier to Rob Thornton, senior lecturer in defence studies at King's College London.
Foreign illegal aliens who are in our country, the kind of people who just brutally
Go to this dry state North Korea do for places more and more artillery shells and a certain number of missiles is very much an act of desperation by Putin. But we must look at this not just as a kind of search for more conditions for the defeat of the Russian military. What Putin also wants to do is to encourage North Korea to create instability in the region, in East Asia. Because instability in East Asia sucks in the Americans, sucks in American forces, American warships, American nuclear submarines. Because the Americans fear some sort of North Korean action against either Japan, or South Korea. So you can see the American military being more focused on East Asia and this particular region rather than on Ukraine. So you can see the logic of Putin's mission to North Korea, yes, to get more and more missions for his own military, but also to create some sort of geopolitical tension or encourage it. It would suck American forces away from Ukraine, thinking about Ukraine, more towards East Asia.
Israel's military has said it has approved operational plans for an offensive in Lebanon. Israel and the Shiite militant group Hezbollah have been exchanging rocket fire ever since the 7th of October last, with Hezbollah recently increasing the intensity of the barrages. Israel has warned that Hezbollah would be destroyed in a total war, while the Pentagon says it does not want to see an escalation in the region. Benjamin Netanyahu has called on Washington to keep supplying Israel with weapons, saying it was inconceivable that Israel's closest ally had been withholding arms and that the country was fighting for its life against common enemies. But the US has a different view of the matter. In a press conference later on Tuesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Washington's arms shipments had remained largely unchanged. Here's Eliza Herbert.
Give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster.
That's the message Benjamin Netanyahu had for Washington on Tuesday when he released a video saying that he had recently appealed to the US Secretary of State for more weapons.
I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Secretary Blinken assured me that the administration is working day and night to remove these bottlenecks.
The US provides Israel with roughly $3.8 billion annually in military aid. And after the October 7 Hamas attacks, the US Senate authorized an additional $14.1 billion in Israel-related spending. In May, after an Israeli strike killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, international pressure piled on the US. President Joe Biden succumbed a little, warning that Israel could lose some US support. He paused one shipment of 2,000-pound bombs over concerns they would be used in Rafah. But on Tuesday, in response to Netanyahu's statement, Blinken made it clear Israel still has Washington's support. He said that while they were continuing to review that one shipment, everything else was as normal.
Our security relationship with Israel goes well beyond Gaza. Israel is facing a multiplicity of threats and challenges, including in the north from Hezbollah, from Iran. So the president's been very clear from day one that he will do everything he can to make sure that Israel has what it needs to effectively defend itself.
But while the US aid may extend to the wider region, it is Gaza that is bearing the brunt. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, the latest death toll is over 37,200 and over 85,000 Palestinians have been injured.
In the US, President Joe Biden has announced new protections for immigrants living illegally in the country who are married to American citizens. The new policy affects about 500,000 people and provides them with a pathway to citizenship, with Donald Trump promising to eject millions of immigrants from the country if he wins a second term. The issue of immigration has emerged as the top concern for voters in the November election. Monty Francis reports.
At the White House Tuesday, Joe Biden and the First Lady marked the 12th anniversary of a program known as DACA, or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, an Obama-era program that extended protections to children of immigrants living illegally in the U.S. The president marked the occasion by extending similar protections to the spouses of American citizens without legal status.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more.
Being married to an American citizen already provides a pathway to U.S. citizenship, but those who entered the country illegally are required to return to their home countries and apply for a green card, a process that can take years. The new policy affects some 500,000 people, offering them a pathway to citizenship and the ability to work legally. They must have lived in the country for at least 10 years and been married to an American as of June 17th. With illegal crossings at the southern border on the rise, immigration has emerged as a major issue in the 2024 presidential campaign. The presumptive Republican nominee, Donald Trump, has promised to open detention centers and deport millions of undocumented immigrants if he wins a second term.
On day one of my new administration, we will begin the largest deportation operation in American history. We have no choice. This is not sustainable.
For his part, Joe Biden has issued his own hard line on immigration. 2 weeks ago, he announced a crackdown on those seeking asylum, effectively shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border when illegal crossings exceed more than 2,500 a day. Both campaigns focused on immigration, with polls showing it as the #1 concern for voters in the November election.
French President Emmanuel Macron has defended his decision to snap legislative elections after his party suffered a resounding defeat in the European polls earlier this month. Figures across the French political spectrum have criticised the decision to call the election over fears that it could hand power over to the far right, but Macron says the decision was a responsible one.
The solution I've taken is the hardest, the most serious. But it's the most responsible, the least bad. And I think the mayor is right. At times like these, by definition, there are no miracles. But changing the prime minister and the government was an easy way out. Holding a referendum to re-legitimize myself was another approach. The people have to be able to decide, and I have confidence in the people.
As the race heats up for France's snap legislative elections, parties are scrambling to roll out their policy priorities. On Tuesday, the far-right National Rally Party unveiled a programme much lighter than what the group has been promising for the past 2 years. The party's president, Jordan Bardella, said he will cut VAT on fuel, but not food. He has also shelved a promised salary raise and zero tax for under-30s. Here's Eliza Herbert with her colleagues from France 2.
In a bid to become the Prime Minister of France, Jordan Bardella has begun rolling out his promises. On Tuesday, the president of the far-right National Rally Party said that to boost purchasing power, he plans to cut VAT on fuel, gas and electricity. He also wants to break European electricity market rules in an attempt to lower French electricity bills by 30%.
Eating and transport are becoming luxuries. I want to take into account the urgency of purchasing power.
Another focus is security. Bardella said he wants to reintroduce minimum sentences for drug trafficking and assaulting law enforcement officers. On immigration, he wants to pass an emergency law to end birthright citizenship, which experts say is unfeasible.
To simply abolish birthright citizenship is clearly contrary to our Constitution. This was said by Robert Badinter in 1993 in discussions before the Constitutional Council. It is unlikely that it would validate the outright abolition.
On the other hand, he has postponed reforms that he has long promised. He said that scrapping the VAT on basic necessities would take place at a later date, and that repealing the pension reform would not commence until autumn. And then there are measures he seems to have abandoned entirely. He's no longer talking about establishing a national preference. Gone too is the abolition of income tax for the under-30s. Many other commitments would depend on an audit of public accounts that the National Rally says it would undertake if it came to power.
The CEO of Boeing was grilled for several hours by a Senate panel in Washington on Tuesday, the latest chapter in the aviation giant's battle to salvage its reputation after fatal crashes, accusations of poor quality control and interfering with whistleblowers, and what has been deemed a broken safety culture. Before the hearing, lawmakers were presented with new whistleblowing claims that Boeing mishandled scores of defective parts. Here's the head of Boeing, Dave Calhoun, in contrite mood.
Our culture is far from perfect, but we are taking action and we are making progress. We understand the gravity, and we're committed to moving forward with transparency and accountability. It is this relentless focus on improvement that has led to our industry's unparalleled safety record. And it is with this mindset we're taking comprehensive action to strengthen safety and quality.
And whistleblowers have played a critical role in bringing to light Boeing's problems and to push the company's leadership to address them. Earlier we spoke with Anita Mendirata, aviation and tourism expert, and asked about their importance.
The issue of whistleblowers is an absolute X-ray on whether or not the promises of safety culture are being delivered by the people. The recent claim about the titanium being brought in and it being faulty was, as Dave Calhoun said, an issue with the supplier that the supplier should have brought up. But the travelers, the staff, they want to know that, again, everything they're doing is keeping people and trade and military safe when it goes into the air. So the whole whistleblower culture is absolutely critical. Unfortunately, one of the elements that's coming up in the Senate hearing that's taking place right now is that so many of the areas of inquiry that the Senate made themselves, whether it was statistics about faults, speaking to whistleblowers, the CEO had not gone into himself. He'd not spoken to whistleblowers himself. He'd not looked at the data himself before it was presented to the Senate. Again, it comes back to the accountability and the visible ownership of the problem by the leader at the top. That's going to enforce that. And that's including when we know that there have been whistleblowers that are suppressed, the leaders of those whistleblowers need to be held to task so that it is very clear that if someone genuinely sees a problem within the organization, they are whistleblowing to be able to make the organization stronger. That should never be muted. And those who mute should be held accountable.
Now, Jamil Ahmed from GTC Group joins me for this morning's business. Good morning, Jamil. Can you tell me what are the markets looking like this morning?
Good morning. It looks like we have a little bit of a slow start to the new trading day, which does suggest that maybe many traders are also watching the European Championships.
Jamil Ahmed, Chief Analyst at GTC Group. Now, Anouk Aimée, star of French cinema, has died aged 92. Aimée first came to international prominence with her starring role in Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita in 1960 and was a key figure of European cinema throughout the decade, working with, among others, Vittorio De Sica, Jacques Denis, Claude Lelouch and Agnes Varda. Catherine Killier-Clifford takes a look back at her career.
I started when I was 13. I was in their final film released within their lifetimes.
Russian President Vladimir Putin touches down in North Korea on his first visit in 24 years. He is cementing a closer relationship with Kim Jong-un at a time when Moscow is increasingly reliant on North Korean weapons for its war effort in Ukraine. Israel's military says it has prepared operational plans for a Lebanon offensive, has increased exchanges of rocket fire with Hezbollah raised fears of an escalation. The IDF says Hezbollah would be destroyed if Israel steps up its offensive. Joe Biden unveils plans to give protection to immigrants living illegally in the United States who are married to American citizens and resident in the country for at least 10 years. The move is likely to benefit up to 500,000 people and offers them a path to citizenship. It's time now for our press review with Leo McGuinn. And Leo...
Today, unachievable, the Albanese government slams the coalition's nuclear option.
There's no sense pretending our economy can operate without a stable energy system.
No costs, no details, no modelling.
Also ahead, a jury finds Justin Stein guilty of murdering his partner's 9-year-old daughter. North Korean welcome the Hermit Kingdom pulls out all the stops for Vladimir Putin's visit. And marking a milestone, the Sydney Swans celebrate 150 years in the AFL. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Charles. The opposition leader Peter Dutton has declared he's happy for the next federal election to be fought on energy, as he's revealed locations for 7 nuclear power sites across the country. The plan has quickly been slammed by state premiers and by the federal government. So reporter Evelyn Manfield joins us now from Parliament House. Hi Evelyn. So run us through the detail in terms of locations, timelines and costs.
Ros, we've learnt today the 7 sites.
An unequal heatwave, 22nd June, Saturday on CNA.
This is Asia Now.
Good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Ilakia Silveraji. Headlines this hour. Vladimir Putin's official state visit to Pyongyang begins. The talks between the Russian president and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un get underway, with both leaders expected to further deepen ties between the nuclear-armed countries. Chinese Premier Li Qiang holds bilateral talks with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and other top officials as part of his 3-day official visit to mark 50 years of diplomatic ties. Observers say the trip could signal a potential boost for President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road initiative. At least 550 pilgrims have died during the Hajj in Saudi Arabia's city of Mecca. Reports say most of them succumbed to heat-related illnesses and many more were treated for heat stress. President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un have begun talks in Pyongyang after a welcoming ceremony was held during his historic visit to boost trade and security cooperation. The two countries are largely shunned on the global stage, and the move to draw closer to each other is rattling the West. Mr. Putin arrived in Pyongyang before dawn.
Muslim pilgrims are wrapping up the Hajj, or pilgrimage, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. During the Hajj, Muslims pray and perform rites, including a stoning ritual. Many pilgrims were gathered in Mina, a desert site outside Mecca, on Tuesday. For sure, one of the most important prayers was for our brothers in Palestine. We were praying that God would make them victorious. The 3-day stoning ritual in Mina symbolizes the casting away of evil and sin. More than 1.83 million Muslims performed Hajj in 2024. Amir made the trip all the way from Nigeria.
Yes, I feel very great that I perform my one pillar in my religion. Yes, I feel very grateful.
The burning sun and suffocating hot weather remained Tuesday, with temperatures expected to reach 47 degrees Celsius in Mecca.
At least 11 people have died and several others still missing after shipwreck off the Italian southern coast on Monday. According to a UN agency, 64 people are still missing after the boat that had set off from Turkey 8 days earlier caught fire and overturned. 12 migrants overall were rescued. They were suffering badly. They had broken pelvis, legs and arms, head contusions and burns because the 11 who were still alive tell us of an explosion on the boat before it started to sink. And they also described a scene in which 5 or 6 life vests were floating away while they were using the floating wreckage of the sailing boat. The search and rescue operations started following a Mayday call by a French boat, the Italian Coast Guard said in a statement. The boat was sailing in a border area where Greece and Italy carry out search and rescue operations. Survivors and people still missing at sea came from Iran, Syria and Iraq. Iran held its first presidential debate Monday on live state TV. Ahead of the forthcoming election on June 28, the discussion ranged from proposals and plans for Iran's spiraling economy, struggling under sanctions from the United States and other Western nations. The debates aroused different discussions within Tehran and the entire country, as billions were glued on their televisions, some pointing figures at the candidates' lack of clear agenda. Instead of blaming each other, making accusations, or challenging others, the candidates should clearly state their own plans and allow the people to review the plans and make their final decisions. This is the first of 5 debates planned in the 10 remaining before the vote in a shortened campaign to replace Raisi, a hardline protege of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They are more focused on criticizing each other. We haven't seen an extensive detailed plan by any candidate. They were mostly debating what other candidates said. The most prominent candidate remains Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf, a 62-year-old former Tehran mayor with close ties to the country's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. However, many remember that Khalibaf, as a former guard general, was part of a violent crackdown on Iranian university students in 1999. The Malawi's Vice President Saulos Chilima was laid to rest on Monday in his village south of the capital, Lilongwe. The military rendered a 19-gun salute as Chilima was laid to rest as his family and others laid wreaths. His family demanded an independent investigation, emphasizing its importance to prevent future accidents. Chilima and 9 other people died in the plane crash last week in Malawi's northern region of Mzimba.
The death of Chilima has touched us all. He was the source of most of the developments, particularly in this area. The plane had gone missing on a flight from Lilongwe to Mzuzu. Chakwera noted air traffic controllers had warned against landing in Mzuzu due to bad weather and advised a return to Lilongwe before losing contact. Chakwera called for unity and patience during the investigation, stressing the need for answers through an independent probe.
Breakdancing will debut as an official Olympic sport at the Paris 2024 Games, and it has already changed the lives of dancers in Rio de Janeiro. As many other symbols of black culture, it has been marginalized and looked down upon by more traditional performing arts. Its inclusion as an Olympic sport immediately opened doors to breakdancers, who are also known as b-boys or b-girls. We were always marginalized, so with breaking events at the Olympics, we now have access to people who didn't give us access, to companies that didn't look at us. We're even starting to attract the attention of public authorities to our dance and our culture in general. Breakdancing or breaking is a style of street dance that first started in the 1970s in Bronxboro of New York. Deeply rooted in hip-hop culture, it's known for acrobatic movement and styled footwork, with rhythm by a DJ and a master of ceremonies during what is known as battles. Breaking has always had a culture of welcoming people, so much so that people stay in this lifestyle because they feel they belong to something. Since 2010, the Flow 21 crew has been active in Rio Cabrido, a neighborhood surrounded by favelas like Morro do Tunaro.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.